My name is Harper Miller, and I was just a fat, exhausted waitress. 240 pounds, 14-hour shifts, and a world where people looked right through me like I was made of glass. I was invisible to them, just a shadow that refilled their water glasses and disappeared back into the walls. I worked at Il Foro di Napoli, the most exclusive underground restaurant in the city. Billionaires, politicians, and dangerous criminals sat at those velvet-lined tables every single night. And not one of them ever looked at me. Not really. To them, I was nobody. And honestly, I had started to believe that too. But that one night, that one single night, ripped my entire ordinary life apart at the seams. It started like every other shift. My uniform waistband was digging painfully into my stomach. My feet were screaming. I had already been on my feet for 12 hours, and the night still refused to end. Then the main doors opened, and the entire restaurant went silent. Lorenzo Falcone walked in. If you don't know that name, consider yourself lucky. Lorenzo Falcone was the undisputed head of the most powerful crime syndicate in the city. He was carved from ice and violence, sharp jaw, black eyes that held absolutely nothing warm inside them, custom charcoal suit, a dozen armed guards surrounding him like living shadows. The air in the room changed when he entered. It got thinner somehow, harder to breathe. I hated serving his table. Every single time he came in, my hands would shake, and my heart would hammer, and I would pray the whole time that he simply would not notice me. Because being noticed by a man like Lorenzo Falcone was never a good thing. I carried the silver tray to his table, vintage Barolo wine. My hands were trembling slightly as I poured it into his crystal glass. He did not look at me once. I stepped back to the bar and watched from a safe distance as his underboss Carmine raised a toast. Lorenzo lifted his glass. He drank. 3 seconds later, the glass shattered on the marble floor. Lorenzo grabbed his throat. A horrible, guttural sound tore out of him. He crashed forward onto the table, sending plates and silverware flying everywhere, and then he hit the floor with a sickening, heavy thud. Everything exploded at once. The front windows of the restaurant blew inward. Gunfire tore through the dining room like a hurricane, screaming, shattering glass. The deafening crack of bullets splitting the air. I threw myself behind the solid oak bar and curled my body as small as I could make it. Shards of glass were raining down on my back. I was sobbing, shaking, completely terrified. But through the gap beneath the bar stools, I saw something that turned my blood ice cold. Carmine. The smiling underboss was not fighting. He was not helping. He was quietly, calmly walking backward toward the kitchen exit, while Lorenzo's loyal guards were being systematically slaughtered around him. It was a betrayal. A planned, deliberate coup. The gunfire stopped as suddenly as it had started. Silence fell over the room like a heavy blanket, and through that silence I could hear one sound. Wet. Choking. Desperate. Lorenzo was still alive. I peered out from behind the bar. His face had turned a terrifying shade of violet. Veins were bulging against his neck. Foam was forming at the corners of his mouth. His body was convulsing against the marble floor. The hitmen hadn't come inside yet. They were waiting outside for the poison to finish the job. Every single survival instinct I had was screaming at me. Run, Harper. Get out. Go through the back door and disappear into the night and never look back. This man is a criminal, a monster. He has never once looked at you. You owe him absolutely nothing. I was already moving toward the back exit, and then his eyes found mine. Through all that chaos and pain and dying, Lorenzo Falcone's black eyes locked directly onto mine, and in that moment, I did not see a mob boss. I did not see a monster or a criminal or the most feared man in the city. I saw a human being drowning in agony, and I could not walk away. My mind was racing. Strychnine or cyanide. I had watched enough true crime documentaries in my lonely apartment to know what this looked like. I needed activated charcoal. I needed to absorb the poison before it finished shutting his body down completely. I dropped to my hands and knees. Glass from the shattered windows was cutting into my thick thighs as I crawled toward the kitchen. I ignored the burning sting of it. I hauled myself up to the brick pizza oven, still radiating enormous heat. I grabbed an iron scraper and pulled out chunks of blackened burnt wood. I pulverized them with a heavy marble pestle into a gritty black powder and mixed it into a pitcher of distilled water. I ran back out to the dining room. Lorenzo was barely moving anymore. His eyes were rolling back. I dropped to my knees beside him and grabbed him by his expensive lapels. "Don't you dare die," I whispered. "Don't you dare." I hauled his upper body off the ground. He was incredibly heavy, pure, solid muscle. The effort made every single muscle in my body scream in protest. Sweat was pouring down my face. I forced his jaw open with shaking fingers. "Drink this," I told him. "Swallow it right now." He fought me. Even half dead, he fought me. His hand weakly gripped my wrist, trying to push me away. But I leaned my entire body weight over him, and I forced him to keep his head tilted back. "Swallow. Please. Swallow." He gagged. He convulsed. And then he swallowed. Seconds passed that felt like entire years. Then Lorenzo lurched sideways and violently vomited everything onto the floor. The black charcoal mixture, the poisoned wine, all of it. He collapsed back, breathing in ragged, shallow gasps, the violent purple color slowly draining from his face, leaving behind a deathly pale gray. He was alive. A heavy thud came from the front entrance, boots crunching over broken glass. The hitmen were coming inside to confirm the kill. I grabbed Lorenzo by the collar of his ruined jacket. "Come on," I grunted, pulling with everything I had left in my exhausted, burning body. "We have to move right now." I found a heavy-duty utility cart near the kitchen used for flour sacks. Getting his dead weight onto that bottom shelf was one of the hardest things I have ever done in my entire life. My vision was going spotty from the effort. My lungs were completely on fire, but I got him on. I pushed that cart through the kitchen doors and out into the dark, rain-soaked alley behind the restaurant just as the beam of a tactical flashlight swept through the dining room behind us. The rain was coming down in freezing sheets. It plastered my hair flat against my face and soaked straight through my uniform. The alley was pitch black, and the cart wheels rattled dangerously loudly over the cracked, wet pavement. Every muscle in my body was past its breaking point. My chest was heaving. My legs were shaking so badly I was genuinely afraid they would give out completely. But I kept pushing. My beat-up 2008 Honda Civic was parked under a flickering street lamp at the end of the alley. Getting Lorenzo into the passenger seat was a nightmare I will never forget. He was completely unresponsive. A massive, limp, unconscious giant. I had to wedge my entire body against his and use my hips and legs as leverage just to get him upright enough to shove through the door. I collapsed into the driver's seat. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely get the key into the ignition. The engine sputtered, coughed, and roared to life. I floored it out of that alley and disappeared into the city just as two black SUVs pulled up to the front of the restaurant. I dragged Lorenzo up 3 flights of stairs to my cramped little apartment on Elm Street. The stairs groaned under our combined weight. By the time I managed to get him onto my sagging floral sofa, my legs completely gave out beneath me. I lay on the floor for 10 full minutes just trying to remember how to breathe. When I finally found the strength to stand, I locked the deadbolt, drew the blinds, and looked at the man I had just stolen back from death. He looked terrible. His expensive suit was soaked and covered in charcoal and vomit. He was shivering violently, his body trapped in feverish shock. I got warm water and clean towels and heavy blankets. I carefully removed his jacket and tie and unbuttoned his shirt to clean the grime from his skin. I could not help but notice the countless old scars mapped across his chest and arms, a brutal, silent history written directly onto his body. I covered him with 2 heavy duvets, tucked a pillow under his head, and then I collapsed into the armchair across from him and fell into an exhausted, restless, paranoid sleep. I woke up to a hand around my throat. My eyes flew open. Morning light was filtering gray and cold through the cheap plastic blinds. Lorenzo was standing over me, moving with a terrifying, silent, predatory grace despite everything his body had just survived. His large, scarred hand was wrapped firmly around my neck, pinning me against the back of the armchair. And his eyes. His eyes were no longer dull and glazed. They were sharp, dangerous, completely merciless. "Who sent you?" His voice was a low, grinding rasp. I clawed at his hand, kicked out with my legs. "No one," I choked out, tears of pure terror burning my eyes. "Nobody sent me. Let go of me right now." His gaze swept slowly around my small, cluttered apartment. The cheap furniture, the stack of past-due bills sitting on the counter, my plus-sized frame trembling in a damp, wrinkled restaurant uniform. He processed everything in seconds. His grip loosened just enough for me to breathe. "Where are my men?" he demanded. "Dead," I gasped, rubbing my throat. "They're all dead. And Carmine set you up. I watched him step back right before the shooting started. He planned the whole thing. You were poisoned, and he walked away." Lorenzo went completely still. The mention of Carmine's name sent something flickering through those dark eyes. A cold, lethal flash of recognition. He slowly released me and stepped back. He pressed his hand against his stomach with a grimace and leaned heavily against the wall. Then he looked at me, really looked at me. Not through me the way everyone always did. Not past me, directly at me, with an intense, calculating focus that made me want to disappear through the floor. "You're the waitress," he said quietly. "You gave me the charcoal." "I couldn't just let you die," I whispered. Before he could respond, the small television I had left on mute the night before flashed with a breaking news banner across the screen. I grabbed the remote. The anchor's voice filled my tiny apartment. Authorities have confirmed a massive shootout at Il Foro di Napoli restaurant. Crime syndicate boss Lorenzo Falcone was the target of the assassination attempt and is presumed dead. His body is missing from the scene. Surveillance footage recovered from a nearby alleyway shows a restaurant employee moving what appears to be Falcone's body. My stomach dropped straight through the floor. Police have identified the suspect as 26-year-old Harper Miller. My driver's license photo filled the entire screen. The interim head of the Falcone organization, Carmine Rossi, has offered a $5 million reward for information leading to the capture of Harper Miller, who is now believed to be a professional assassin hired by a rival family. The remote slipped out of my fingers and clattered onto the hardwood floor. $5 million. My face on every television screen in the city. I had saved this man's life. I had risked everything. And now I was being hunted as the person who tried to kill him. Lorenzo pushed himself off the wall. The weakness vanished from his posture like he had simply decided it no longer had permission to exist. He looked at the screen. Then he looked at me. "Well, Harper Miller," he said softly. A dark, quiet promise threading through every single word. "It appears we are both being hunted." We ran. Lorenzo hot-wired a dark blue truck 2 blocks from my apartment, while Carmine's men were already kicking my front door in above us. We took the back roads out of the city, rain hammering the windshield, silence filling the cab between us like a living thing. I sat pressed against the passenger door, trying to make myself as small as possible, which has never been easy for me, and the shame of getting stuck in my own kitchen window during our escape was sitting heavy and bitter in my chest. "I almost got us both killed," I muttered, "because I couldn't fit through a window." Lorenzo pulled the truck onto the shoulder of the highway and put it in park. He turned and looked at me with an expression I had absolutely never seen directed at me before in my entire life. "The women in my world are decorative," he said. His voice was low and completely steady. "They are thin and fragile and entirely useless when the bullets start flying. When I was dying on that floor, not one single person in that room moved toward me. You dragged my dead weight through a war zone. You pulled me out of that building. You kept us both alive tonight." He paused. "Do not ever apologize for the body that saved both our lives." I stared at him. No one had ever said anything like that to me, not once in my entire life. My heart did something strange and violent inside my chest that I did not have words for yet. We hid for 2 days in a run-down motel near Scranton called the Starlight Motor Inn. Lorenzo used a prepaid phone to make quiet, encrypted calls, slowly and carefully reassembling the loyal pieces of his fractured empire. On the 3rd night, he looked up from the phone and said simply, "Tonight." Carmine was holding an emergency summit at an abandoned shipping warehouse on Pier 44 in Brooklyn. He was planning to formally claim control of the Falcone syndicate and divide Lorenzo's territories among the rival families. "How do we stop him?" I asked. "We don't stop him," Lorenzo said, checking the magazine of a pistol with practiced, frightening ease. "We destroy him, but I need a distraction to get through the perimeter." I took a breath. "I'll do it." He shook his head immediately. "Absolutely not." "They are looking for a trained professional assassin," I said, and my voice was steadier than I felt. "They are not looking for a fat, terrified delivery girl carrying pizzas. I can cause enough of a scene at the front door to pull the guards out while you slip through the back loading dock." Lorenzo stared at me for a long moment. Then he crossed the small distance between us. His rough, warm hand came up and gently cupped my cheek. His thumb brushed slowly across my skin. "If anything happens to you tonight," he said quietly, "I will burn this entire city to the ground." 3 hours later, I was standing in the freezing rain outside Brighton warehouse in a bright yellow plastic poncho, holding 3 large pizza boxes with my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. "Hey, stop right there." 2 heavily armed guards stepped out from the shadows, hands on their holsters, flashlights in my face. "Delivery for Carmine Rossi," I yelled over the rain, pitching my voice into pure annoyed exhaustion. "Extra cheese, no olives, and somebody better tip me properly because it is absolutely miserable out here tonight." The guards looked at each other in total confusion. "We didn't order any pizza." "Look, buddy," I huffed, shifting my weight onto one hip with full dramatic energy. "I just deliver the food. You want it or not, because I am keeping the cash either way." While they argued with me, while their complete attention was locked onto the loud, irritating, overweight delivery girl in the yellow poncho, a dark shadow detached silently from the brick wall behind them. Lorenzo moved like a ghost. Through the side door. Into the warehouse. Gone. I shoved the pizza boxes into the nearest guard's chest, yelled, "Keep it," and walked away fast into the rain. Mission complete. Inside the warehouse, Carmine stood at the head of a long table, surrounded by the men he had bought and the families he had invited to feast on Lorenzo's empire. "With Falcone gone," Carmine announced, raising his glass with a triumphant smile, "we usher in a new era." I would not drink that. The voice came from above, cold, familiar, completely alive. Lorenzo stepped into the harsh warehouse light from the steel catwalk overhead like an avenging ghost. Carmine's glass shattered on the concrete floor. It was over in minutes. Lorenzo found me waiting in the rain outside the warehouse. He walked straight to me, said nothing for a moment, just looked at me the way he had been looking at me since that first night in the apartment, like I was the most remarkable thing he had ever seen in his life. Then he kissed me. And I want to tell you that I had some elegant, composed reaction to being kissed by the most dangerous man in the city in the pouring rain outside a Brooklyn warehouse. But honestly, I just kissed him back. Because I was Harper Miller, 240 pounds, bad car, cheap apartment, past due bills, just a fat, invisible waitress that nobody ever looked at twice. Until the night I decided that a man dying on a marble floor was worth more than my own safety. And that one choice changed absolutely everything. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now. Share it with someone who loves a good plot twist. And subscribe for more stories just like this one. Drop in the comments. What do you want to hear next?